also, and I'm going to talk to you today about solar. Just kidding. This guy doesn't know anything about solar. So I'm going to tell you instead. Alright. Guess we'll start with the panels. You want to show the panels? Sure. So we have 6 300-watt panels. And those guys... Let's go look at the combiner box. This is the combiner box. Let's turn it on. Okay, put it back on me. So the panels and those breakers and the charge controller I'm about to show you all came with our bus. Thank you, Braden and family, for that. Those panels are feeding into this charge controller, which I will turn on with this 100 amp breaker. And the charge controller is powering up, and so that is the Midnight 200 amp Classic. And these are our 12 volt batteries. We have a total of 8. They are connected in series and parallel to create 24 volt batteries. And so we have those connected to our inverter here. Oh, actually I'll show you the inverter in a second. So all these batteries, we turn them on and off with this battery disconnect. I'm not totally sure if this is necessary, but I kind of liked having as many disconnects as possible. So we'll turn that on. This is all 4.0 gauge wire that we're using for everything except for the cables coming from the charge controller are 4 gauge because they do not carry as much voltage as from the batteries to the inverter. So that's why those can be smaller. But then the cables, all the cables from that are connecting the batteries and that are going to the inverter are all 4/0 gauge. I don't really know what that's called, but it's 4/0. Yeah. Okay. So all of those are connected to our inverter, and I'll show you the inverter in a second, but first I want to show you this. Our inverter has 2 available inputs, the batteries, which we just showed, and a 50 amp plug-in. So we can just plug the bus in here, and hi, money. So our inverter, this is a Ames Power 6,000 watt with an 1,800 watt surge rating. And we have it set up right now for split phase power. So that means that we have two hots coming out, and so they can be up to 25 amps each of 120 volt continuous power with a surge rating of that times 3. Cool. And so, like I was showing earlier, this is the input power if we ever want to plug in, if our batteries are ever dead. And what's nice is we can even put our inverter on battery priority so that we can be plugged in and have our batteries running. And it will use the battery power if it's available, and then if those run low, it'll switch over to being plugged in, and so that we can actually use our batteries whenever we want. So that's nice. So coming out, so we have that going in, and then coming out we have the same gauge of wire, and here is where this comes out. This is AC power, and that's going up through a hole in the bus, and that is going to our AC panel, which we will show you now. So now the AC panel. So this is the part that I spent most of my brain power on because I could not figure out how I was supposed to use So this is a sub panel, not a main breaker panel. And so normally with these sub panels, what you would have is you would have your two hots coming in right here, one hot, two hot. Then you would have your neutral and your ground. But this is a...
That's what he says.
Commentary from Oso. This is but we don't need that much power. And I wanted to have a place to turn it on and off. So what we did instead was I went ahead and got a 70 double pole breaker. And what I was so confused about was where the power comes in. But as someone told me on an online forum, electricity doesn't care which way it's flowing. So what you do is you take your input, this is from the inverter, and you put that as, technically it would be, would be the output of the 70 amp double pole breaker. So we have our two hots that are coming from our inverter going in here, and so this becomes our on and off for our breaker panel, which is cool. And the reason I did 70 instead of 50 was because of the surge rating of the inverters. If we did have a surge, this would at least let the surge go to the inverter, and then the inverter will set its breaker off if it becomes too much for too long. And yeah, and then after that you just wire it just like any other panel. That was the confusing part for me. So we have some ground fault breakers in here. We also, these were cool. These are tandem breakers. So because this is an 8 space panel, but it is a 16 circuit panel. So we can have pretty much all of these could be tandem breakers, which is cool. So we put a couple of tandems in here so that we can have multiple 15 and we don't have to get a bigger panel. Yeah, so Oso pretty much planned all this out, and we've just been doing it per his specs, and he's a pretty smart dude, so hopefully we don't burn the bus down.